Hello, this is Lisa.
Hello, this is Ian Edmondson.
Could you speak up a little?
This is Ian Edmondson.
Hi, Ian. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you tonight?
I'm just fine. I am going to be recording this call, both video and the audio part. So I just wanted to let you know this will be posted on the website.
Okay.
Okay?
Sounds good.
Okay. So I've just started screen sharing, so you should be able to see my screen now.
Where at?
On your desktop.
I'm not seeing anything right now.
Are you logged into freeconferencecall.com?
I clicked the link and it says join online meeting, but
Okay. Go ahead and do that.
me for username and a password.
Okay. You can just join for free. Let me.
Well, no.
Is that something you don't want to do? I mean, it doesn't cost you anything to join, and it allows you.
Yeah, I didn't
Here,
know
you
that's
should
what I
just
needed
be able to
do
join the meeting. You should just be able to join the meeting.
Now my computer's okay. Here we go.
Okay.
All right, try it again.
Because it's much easier for you if you can see what's going on while I'm talking.
All right. It just said join the meeting, enter name, and enter email. So I guess I'll just.
Okay.
I didn't realize I had to sign up and that. That's all.
Yeah, that's all.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so I see we've got Michael Jackson in here as well. And one other person that doesn't have a name. So can everyone see my desktop? Hello? Here. Let's
Hello?
go this way. Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes?
This is Michael. Michael Jackson.
Hi, Michael. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Fine. Can you see my desktop?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. Ian, can you see my desktop now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Cool. And there's another person in on the phone only, it looks like.
Yeah, I'm
there
on
a third?
Desktop. I'm on desktop and
Okay.
phone because I'm watching on the TV. So.
Oh, okay. That's fine. I just wanted to make sure everyone could see what was going on. So what we're going to talk about tonight is we're going to talk about, let's see, this is variables and expressions, and types is next week. Hold on, let me double check.
Well, it said Chapter 3 was part of this week, too.
Okay, so we're going to go through Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 this week. If you have questions, just stop me and let me know, or type something into the chat. And I will do my best to answer it. The way I generally am going to do this is I'm going to talk to the material, and then I'm going to do one of the optional labs in each chapter to help you understand how to go through the process. And then you can try the non-optional lab on your own, but hopefully you will have some insight as to how to do this. Now, a few things to know about the way I grade this class. I grade to the rubric, so everything you do is based on the rubric. I will not take off points for space and small issues associated with your labs. So if you don't get the spacing right on something, I'm not going to take any points off for it, partly because ZY Books has issues with spacing. And please reach out to me. If you're getting frustrated, stop and send me an email. When you send me that email, take me a picture of what it is that you're seeing on your screen. So take a picture of your code and a picture of the error message, because I can usually get you to the next point, okay, without too much trouble. That's why I'm here. I'm here to help you do the best you possibly can in this class. So those are just some things to remember as you go through this. Now, one thing also to remember about ZyBooks is when you do the activities, hold on. When you do the activities, you can answer the question again and again and again and again and again. There's no penalty for answering a question multiple times, so you can answer it until you get it right. Okay?
All right.
All right.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, did somebody have a question?
No,
I
so
actually
you're
did.
talking. Are you talking about for the labs, are you talking about when we submit it over and over and over again?
No.
I know I've done
There are participation activities, and then there's the labs. The participation activities, you can answer those questions again and again and again.
Okay.
For the labs, you can't. You get one chance to submit it. You can try as often as you want before you submit it, but you can only submit it once.
Oh, well, because when I've done it for the labs, it's let me submit it over and over again until I got it right, pretty much.
Okay. Well, I meant
like 3 out of 5 or something like that, and then so I submitted it again, and it finally would do it.
Okay. That's fine then. I could be wrong. That's completely fine.
Okay.
Okay? So we're going to start on objects and variables this week. And a variable is one of the basic building blocks in Python. A variable is a space in memory that has a name and a value. Now that value can be nothing, but it still has a value. So if we just look here at just this x equals 7, the name of the variable is x. We know it's a variable because it is to the left of a single equal sign, and the value is 7. And we know that's the value because it's immediately to the right of the single equal sign. So that's what it is. A variable is simply a named space in memory. You have taken a portion of your program's memory and you've given it a name. And then you're going to store something in it. And in this case, what we see is we're storing the number 7. Now, we could store a string, or we could store a float. We can store all kinds of things. We can, later on, we can store, complex structures in them. For this example, we have a variable whose name is x. We know it's a variable because it is to the left of a single equal sign, and it's storing the value 7. So whenever you're creating your own variables, that's the pattern you want to follow. Name, single equal sign, value. And you have to define a variable before you use a variable. And this is a variable definition. Okay? So we're defining something that hasn't existed before, which is x, and we're giving it a value, which is 7. Okay. And a variable can be, like I said, anything. It can be an integer, it can be a float, it can be a string. Now, here they're talking about creating a variable again, and this is, in fact, a very similar thing. Here we see age equal input. So it says print enter your age. Now, print, as we figured out last week, is putting something out to the console. It's printing to the console, to a place where the user can see it. Here we have the variable age, and we're equaling this thing called input. Input is the way we get information from the console into the program, because there has to be some way to do that. And when we're just learning, it's about a user typing in. So when we use the input function, we're saying we are expecting a user to type in a piece of information. And in this case, the piece of information is the age. So the value that somebody enters when the input statement is executed will be what age is, what the value for the variable age is. So we're not going to go creating variables. Create a variable named numHouses and initialize the variable to 25. So basically, all I'm going to do is go numHouses, and I'm going to say 25. And that's all I have to do. That is how you initialize a variable. It's very straightforward. Now, there are some things that you have to be careful when you name a variable. You can't name a variable num space houses. You will get a syntax error. You'll get an error like this that just came up. Syntax error, invalid syntax. Well, that's true because you can't have a space in a variable name. You can actually only have a space in a string. And you also can't have, let's not use percent. Let's use at. Same thing. So there are very few special characters that you can have in a variable name. So you can basically have an underscore as a separator in a variable name. So you have to be careful of what you're naming them, that they follow the naming convention assigned by Python. But other than that, this is as simple as it gets. A variable called num houses. I know it's a variable because it's to the left of the single equal sign, and I'm giving it a value of 25. So let's talk about assignment. Assignment is the process of setting a value into a variable. Now, what we have to remember here is it's a single equal sign. Next week, we're going to get into something called, it's a double equal sign, and we use that for our conditional statements. So a single equal sign is assignment, which means I am assigning a value to a variable. And a double equal sign we'll get to next week. I don't want you to confuse the two. That's why I'm bringing it up now. So, and we've already basically talked about this. Name equal expression. That's what you do. And these are just, assigning a variable is just what we've already talked about. Now, here's an interesting thing. We have this variable called annual underscore mice. And we here are using the product of two different variables that we've already assigned. We've assigned litter size to 3, and we've assigned yearly litters the value of 5. So down here, we're using litter size times yearly litters, which will give us 15. So we can assign the value in one variable and make it the value in another variable. Or we can do calculations on it. So let's see. Variables can be manipulated. You can set a variable to one thing and then set it again to another thing. So here we have Bob's salary, it's $25,000. And down here we have Bob's salary again, which equals Tom's salary. So here we have initialized the variable because it's the first time it's shown up in the program. And here we're just using that same variable called Bob's salary, and we're setting it to a different value. And in this case, we're setting it to the value contained in the variable Tom's salary, which will be $30,000. So we'll do this one, and then I'm probably not going to do many more until we do the lab, because I don't want to take up too much time with this. So basically, it's write a statement that assigns total coins with the sum of nickel count and dime count. Sample output for the given program is 300. So nickel count and dime count. Print total coins. So total coins, I'm going to say is, I have to do it down here, this is now let's run it, and we're happy. So that's basically what we're doing here, okay? All we're doing here is we're just making a sum based on two different variables. Now, if I'm going too slow, let me know. And if I'm going too fast, let me know. All right? So they're talking a little bit about objects and types. There are basically three types in Python. There is an integer, there is a string, and there is a float. An integer is just that. It's just what you would think in mathematics it is. It is a number without a decimal place. A float, on the other hand, is a number with a decimal place. It can have any number of spaces after the decimal place. And a string is anything enclosed in quotes. Now, Python will always assume something is a string unless you tell it it's not, especially when that something, that piece of information, is coming through the console. Now, here we're just looking at a few things to say, tell me the type of something. So if you're not sure what the type of the value is in the variable x, you use the type. And we won't be doing a lot of that in this class. It's good to know, but we won't be doing a lot of that. This is what I was talking about before, about what you can and cannot name a variable. And you can't, pretty much it's letters and underscore. But then there are also certain things that you can't name it. They're reserved keywords in Python, and this is the table of them. And so this is something that you should familiarize yourself with. So here's our numeric types, floating point. Floating point is just that. It is a number, dot, and then some number of decimal places afterwards. And you work it like everything else, okay? If you are entering input from the console and you want to treat the value that's coming from the console as a float, you have to use this function called float, okay? And what that does is it says, the string that is coming from this input, I want it to be, it should be a float, so I'm going to retype it. I'm going to change the type of the information from a string, because input will always be a string, to a float. That's what I want to do. And without that, you won't be able to do calculations using that particular value, because it will assume it's a string because it came from the input function. And we'll look at some of that in a bit. Overflow error. You can get, it's really long. You can get an overflow error. They usually happen when you're doing large mathematical calculations or when you've got some kind of crazy looping going on. I wouldn't really worry about overflow areas. So I'm going to do paint a wall because it is something that will help you in Chapter 3. So we have 350 square feet requires 1 gallon of paint. Assign gallons underscore paint with the amount of paint required for wall area. Submit your output. So the area of the wall we're going to paint is 250 square feet. Okay? We have 1.0 as the gallons that we have because we don't know how many gallons. So what am I going to do? Well, it says gallons underscore paint, assign gallons underscore paint with the amount of paint required for the wall area. So I'm going to say gallons underscore paint equals, I have 250, which is wall area, And we're going to divide that by 350, which will tell us the number of gallons of paint that we need. So let's run it, see what happens. So the wall area is 250 square feet, and our value is correct at that. And then they did it again. They put in another input. So, and these are just inputs that zyBooks is putting into the program for you because it can do that. Expressions. So these are all different expressions. An expression can be a variable assigned with a value. It can be a variable assigned with some form of mathematical operation. So that's all an expression is here. And that's all you really have to know about it. Now we get to what I think is a little bit more important is arithmetic operators. So you know how to do calculations in Python. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, and modulo. Okay, modulo is kind of important, but the big four are these, and these are the ones you really are going to have to use for the class. You might have to do exponentiation, but I don't think so. And when you get past these, if you start to do a lot of mathematics, there is a math module that you can use. So that's what you should remember. Okay. So we're going to go down. Precedence rules are pretty much like precedence rules are for algebra. Things in parentheses are first, addition is before multiplication, those types of things. So, I'm sorry, multiplication is, okay, multiplication is before addition and subtraction, my bad. But this will tell you the order of precedence for doing numeric calculations. So, module basics. Okay. So, what we're going to be doing is pretty much writing individual scripts. And those scripts are run by the interpreter. Now, there's also something called a module. And a module is somebody else, or maybe you, but somebody else has written a set of functionality in Python, and you're going to make it available to your program so that you don't have to rewrite it and write it again and again and again. So the name of the module will be the name of the Python file, and you'll have an import statement. And an import just says, bring in all this information, all this programming, the functions and everything else. Bring those in to my program so I can use them. Like I mentioned, the math module. You don't want to have to write a function for doing the sine and cosine of something. Well, there's a math module that already does that for you and gives you a function named sine and another function named cosine. So that's what modules are. They're a way of allowing you to share and reuse code. And there are lots and lots of different modules out there. And these are just some of the basic module information. We're really not going to be using modules much in this class because we're in zyBooks. But if you go out and you start programming in a Python integrated development environment, you will use more modules. There is also something called the main module. The math module. This is what I was talking about before. The math module just has mathematics in it. You can do a square root, you can do a float, you can do a sine, cosine, and all of that. So that's basically an overview of Chapter 2. So we have these three optional labs. And I was going to do the food receipt. So we can look and see how to do that. And also how to read a program and the problem statement from Python or from Zybooks. So accuracy is essential. Floats are not used to represent currency due to rounding and accumulation errors. Python provides several primitives that are beyond the scope of this lab. So prompt. Prompt the user to input a food item name, a price, and a quantity. Output an itemized receipt. So this is what they want us to do. This is what they want us to input. And this is what they want us to output. So what I do with all the Zybooks stuff, because spaces are so important, is I start by just copying things. Now this isn't going to compile at this point, but that's okay. So what we see here is what they've given us. They've given us item name and enter food item name. So the first thing we're going to know is that the food item name we're going to enter is hot dog. So that's going to go here. Hold on. And it's okay to copy this stuff, by the way. You don't need to continually type it. So we've got the first line. The second line is enter item price. So I'm just going to copy this because it's easier. So I'm going to call this item price. So that's going to be the name of my variable. And I'm going to input enter item price. Now this isn't exactly right, and I know it's not right, and I'm going to show you later why it's not right. But right now, I'm just going to leave it as is, because it's going to cause an error in my program. But I want you to see what that error is. So if you get that error, you understand what's going on. So now, I'm going to say item quantity. So I'm going to make this item quantity. And I'm going to say input item quantity. And then I'm going to make this 5. Okay, whoops, 5. So these are here, okay? And so I'm going to output a receipt. So first I'm going to print the word receipt. And then what I have to do is I have to print 5 hot dog or 5 item name at dollar item price equals the total. And then I print out the total cost. So I'm going to print, this is formatted printing. And I think we did this last week. %D because it's an integer. %D, %S at dollar %. I think it's 1.1F. So a float with 1 decimal place equals dollar space %.1F. And so this is going to be here. Let me do it this way. It'll probably be easier. So total cost is going to be item price times item quantity. So this case is going to be item name, item price, item quantity, and then total cost. Let's just leave it like this. Oh, well, we'll just do this. .1%. Oh, sorry, percent. My bad. Percent .1 F, a float with one place. Okay. Sorry, got that a little wrong. So, total cost, colon space. And then this is just the string substitution stuff that we did last week. Total cost. Okay? So I'm going to run this, and I know there are going to be some errors. Okay? So we're going to look at it, and we say enter food item name, price and quantity, receipt, and then I get this trace back. Can't multiply sequence by non-int of type stir on line 7. So I've got this item price times item quantity, and it's saying that something is of type stir when I'm trying to multiply with it. So let's go back and take a look at some things. Item price should be an integer, but right now, because I'm using the input method, it's assuming it's a string. So what do I do to make this string an integer for Python? I use the int function. The int will say whatever's coming in from the console, assume that it's going to be an int and change its type to an int. Item quantity is supposed to be a float, not a string. So I'm going to do the similar thing here, but I'm going to use the flunk function to turn the string that's coming in into the type of a float. So let's run this again. Absolutely.
I have a question about that. So, you saying the quantity would not be would be the float and not the price, even though the price would have the decimal point? Ask the question again. So, okay, so item quantity would be a float, and then item price is the integer. But would item price be the float because it will have a decimal point?
You're right. I got that backwards. Very good catch.
Yeah, had me confused.
You got it right. I got it wrong.
Thank you. I didn't.
No, you're good. I had it wrong. Okay. So what is this? This is item. So it's percent %B, which is item price or item quantity. I had this wrong too. Item name, item price, total cost. Now let's run it and see what I get. Okay, so now we have the output and it's correct. So we see how to use the input and change the type of some things. So I'm going to stop with this now, and I'm going to go to section 3 because section 3 needs at least as much time. We'll probably end up going over a little bit. So types. Types are just what we talked about before, okay? There are strings, there are ints, there are floats, and then there are compound structures. And a compound structure is a list, and it's a dictionary. Those are the two compound structures that we're going to use in this class. So let's start off with strings. What is a string? Well, a string is pretty much anything in quotes in Python. And it can be as long as you want. It can be as short as you want. It can be a single character. It can have special characters in it. If it's in quotes, it's a string. And it's that easy. Now, what is a string? A string is actually a series of characters in order. That's what it is. When we look at this string, Trish, there are 6 places. Now, this is important. It starts with 0. We're going to come back to this with lists. But every fixed sequence and some non-fixed sequences always start with 0. It messes students up sometimes, but it always starts with 0. So there are 6 spaces. There are 6 characters. The space is a character. Okay, just because we don't see it visually doesn't mean that it's not a character. There are a lot of things that are in the ASCII tables that take up space in a computer program that aren't necessarily visible. A space is one of them. But you'll see that it is simply a sequence of characters in order. That's what a string is. And a character is just a character. It's A, B, C, it's the space, it's a new line, it's all kinds of that. Now, what can I do with a string? There's a couple things I can do with a string. One of which is I can determine the length of the string. Now, determining the length of the string is going to become important in the next couple of sections. So what you want to remember is the len, or len function. The len function will give you the length of a string. So in the example here, I have George 5, and this is a nice little paragraph about His Majesty George V. And if I do a len of George 5, I will get that it is 185 characters, because that's what len does. It counts the characters for me. It counts spaces, it counts commas, all punctuation, it counts new lines, it counts all that stuff. So len will give me the total length of everything in the string. Now, one thing to notice and to not get hung up about is the fact that in this case, they have got this thing in quotes, and then they've got this left-facing slash, and then another line of stuff in quotes and a left-facing slash. The left-facing slash simply says continue on the next line. So what you're really doing is all of this is one string because of these slashes. Don't worry about that in your code. You won't have to do that. When you're reading through this, I didn't want it to become confusing. So the leftward facing slash extends the string literal to the next line. How do I get at an individual character in a string? Well, I use the square brackets. Because a string is simply a sequence of individual characters, I can actually access an individual character in a string. And I can do this by using these, kind of hard to see here. Let's see if I can make it a little bigger. That's better. I can do this by using these square brackets, okay? Alphabet is a string. It's a sequence of characters, 26 to be exact. And if I want to print just a single character from this string, I use the variable alphabet, I use an open square bracket, and then I use the index value, and then I use a closed square bracket. So this says, from the variable alphabet, get me the character at the 0 position. And the 0 position is A, because every sequence in Python starts at 0. And this one says, from the variable alphabet, get me the character at position 25, and that will be the Z. And that's because since every sequence in Python starts with a 0, even though there are 26 characters, the position is going to be 25 because the first position starts at 0. That can be a little confusing and a little frustrating for people, but always remember that because you have to start at 0. So even if there are 26 characters, the last position you're going to have is 25. So let's keep going. This one. Strings are immutable. So you cannot change, in a string, you cannot change the value in a position. So if I wanted to change lowercase a to an uppercase a in the string, I couldn't do it because strings are immutable. They cannot be changed. What you basically have to do is you have to split them and then change what you want and then bring them back together. So you have to create new variables. But we won't worry about that right now. Strings in this instance are immutable. Alphabet will always be this whole string unless you reassign all of alphabet to something else. You can add strings together. Now, when you add strings together, it's called concatenation. And concatenation will simply put one string after another string, after another string, after another string. But that's what the plus sign does if you're dealing with strings. It's just going to take one string and put it on the back of another. And then if you have 3 strings, it's going to put it on the back of that. And that's all it does. And it can be a very handy thing to do, especially if you don't want to go through a lot of figuring out what the formatted output is for a given print statement. So let's just go through this challenge activity really quick. And it says reading multiple data types. We're going to have 2 statements. The first reads the user input for the person name. The second reads for the person age. Below is a simple output for the given program. Okay? In 5 years, Amy will be 9. All right? So name is nothing. That's what the double quotes are. It's just empty string. And age is 0. So we're going to say there's going to be 2 input statements. So I'm going to have person name is going to be input because I'm taking something in from the console. I'm going to say enter user name. Probably, hold on, end quote, double quote. And then I'm going to have person age is input, enter user age. Oops. End it with a quote. See, I do things like that. And then it's going to print out person name will be person age plus 5. So I'm going to run the program. Now I'm going to see what it says. Oops. Must be stir not int. In 5 years, person name will be person age plus 5. So person age needs to be converted to an int. That's what that error meant. Okay? So it's not happy with the fact that I did this. But this part is correct. So what I needed to do here, if I want to make this really absolutely the way they want it in Zybooks, is to get rid of that and run it. And it's happy. Concatenating strings is just adding them together. So you're going to, in this way, you're going to do some input stuff. I'm not going to do any more of these because we need to go into lists and dictionaries. Now, lists and dictionaries we're going to cover kind of in a cursory basis right now, but then we're going to have a complete separate module just on lists and dictionaries. So we found out that strings are simply an ordered sequence of characters. If we take that to the next step, we can create something called a list that is an ordered sequence of information. And a list can have whatever you want in it. It can have strings, it can have integers, it can have floats, it can have other lists. But for right now, we're just going to look at creating a string with 3 elements. So if I look at this, I have a variable named nums. Now it's a variable because it's on the left-hand side of a single equal sign. I know this is a list because I'm opening it with a square brace, and I'm closing it with a square brace. And I have 3 different elements in this list. I have 5, 15, and 20. So if I wanted to print out the list, it would just look like 5, 15, and 20. But there are all kinds of things you can do with a list. Unlike a string, a list defined in this way is mutable, which means it can change. So here we see prices. Prices is a list. We know it's a list because it has the open square brace and the closed square brace. And it has 3 values. It has one value that's a string, that's $1.20, one value that's a float, and one value that's an int. And that's important. It means that you can combine types of data in a list. So we're going to do this really quick. It says, the following program prints a list of names. Try adding your name to the list and run the program. So I'm just going to say Lisa. And when I run the program, it's going to print out the four names. How do I get to an element in a list? Well, I get to an element in a list by using the accessor. And the accessor is the index or the position of the element in the list. So, for instance, if I look here and I have a Lamborghini, I can't pronounce that, is way too much money for any car. A Bugatti is way too much money for any car. And an Aston Martin is still way too much money for any car. And then I create a list called prices. I know it's a list because it's got an open and closed square brace. I have 3 elements in the list. One thing to remember is the elements are always separated by a comma. And then I'm going to print how much the Lamborghini costs in dollars. Well, how am I going to know that? Well, I want to get this from the prices list, and the Lamborghini is the first element in the prices list. So its position number is 0, or its index is 0. So I will use that 0 to get that information out of the list. I want to make this smaller. There we go. You can change elements in a list by just assigning it based on its position in the list. So in this case, I have a variable called mynums. I'm assigning it a list. I know it's a list because of the square open and close brackets. But I decide that I don't want the number 12 in my list. I want the number -28 in my list of, mynums, the list called mynums. So I use the position, which is 1, because remember, everything starts at 0. So this would be 0, this would be 1, and this would be 2. So my nums at position 1, which will be this, is now going to equal minus 28, and that's what happens. Come on. There we go. Now, there are ways that you can create and manipulate a list when you don't quite know the information at the start of the program. Maybe you want to input information and create a list. So you can start with an empty list, and you can append data to a list. So that means just add it to the end of the list, and you can append until there's no more room on the disk if you want. You can also remove elements from a list. Pop will remove the first element from a list. It will pop it off the top. Remove will remove an element based on its value. So let's say I had that list of names and I wanted to remove Lisa. So I would just say remove. I would say, my list dot remove, and then the value Lisa. So these are just some of the functions that are useful for a list. You can sum a list. You can have min and max, and min and max are very good for integers and floats. You can create a new list by concatenating two lists. You can find the length of a list. You can find the index for the first element, the count of an element. So those are all some very handy functions that you can use on a list. Len we will use quite often. So what am I doing here? Sorry. They're just using some of the functions here. The Len is saying there are so many house prices in the list. That's all it's doing. Okay, a tuple is immutable. It's a nice thing to know about, but we won't really be using tuples. Okay? So here they say they want you to initialize a list. Initialize the list short names using strings Gus, Bob, and Ann. So short names is we're going to create a brand new list since we know what the values are. We're going to say Gus is the first element. Bob is the second element. And Ann is the third element. So let's run this and see what happens. Okay, I did something wrong. List index is out of bounds, 0, 1, and 2. Short names, Gus, Bob, Ann. Oh, what did I do wrong? Well, here's what I did wrong. I forgot a comma. And that caused that error. So now we're going to move on to dictionaries. A dictionary is different from a list. A dictionary is not a sequential set of information that can be accessed by its index number or its position. A dictionary is a series of key value pairs. And a key value pair just says, I have a name for something, and I have a value associated with it. But I can do this in a very structured manner. So let's first take a look at some of the syntax of a list. I have a variable called players, and I'm going to create a dictionary of players. How do I know it's a dictionary? Because it opens with a curly brace and it closes with a curly brace. And right now, my dictionary of players has two players in it. It has one player whose key is Lionel Messi, and the value is 10. And I have another one that's Cristiano Ronaldo, and the value is 7. Now, we'll notice a little different syntax here because of this colon. This is what makes it the key value pair. This is the key. This is the value. They're always separated by a colon. And the comma separates key value pairs. The whole pair is separated by a comma. So that's a dictionary. That's how you create a dictionary. How do I get at stuff in a dictionary? I get at stuff in a dictionary by its key. So in this case, I have a variable called prices. I have a dictionary. That dictionary, I know because it's open and closed curly braces. The first key in my dictionary is apples, and the price of apples is $1.99. The second key is oranges, and the value for oranges is $1.49. So how do I get at $1.49 from the prices list? Well, I use the fact that its key is apples. So I say, okay, apples matches apples. The value of apples is $1.99, so it's going to print out $1.99. So you can add things to a dictionary and you can edit them because a dictionary is not immutable. A dictionary can be changed. So here I've created an empty dictionary. I know it's an empty dictionary because there's nothing between the open and closed curly braces. I'm going to add something to prices. What am I going to add? I'm going to add a key called banana, and I'm going to add a value at $1.49. And then let's say sometime down the road, oh, wait a minute, the price of bananas went up. So I'm going to take banana, and I'm going to change it to $1.69. So over here, we see the first print statement where it's $1.49. We see the second print statement where it's $1.69. And let's say I just wanted to clear all my prices out. So I del prices banana. So I'm removing the key value pair, which is identified by banana, from the prices variable. That's how we read that. Modifying and adding to a dictionary. Write a statement to add the key Tesla with the value USA to car makers. Modify the car maker to Fiat, Fiat to Italy. Sample output for the program is that. So I'm going to have, I have Acura Japan, Fiat Egypt. Well, Egypt isn't right. We've been told it's supposed to be Italy. But we're going to do this by using what we have learned. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going, oh, can't do that. I'm going to say car underscore makers. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add one. So I'm adding Tesla, not Tesla, Tesla. And the value for Tesla is going to be USA. So I've now adding the key value pair to car makers. And then I'm going to change the value for Fiat to Italy. Car makers of Fiat is going to be Italy. So let's see what happens when I run it. Okay, I got it right. Tesla's made in the USA, and I know that I've added Tesla because this didn't crash. If I had not added Tesla, let's just get rid of that for a minute. I would have gotten a nasty error that says, key error Tesla, which says there's no key named Tesla in your car makers. So if I do that and I run it, it works. So that's adding and modifying elements in a dictionary. So this is just the summary of the common data types. And this is just the summary of type conversions, int, float, and stir. And there is a way to convert an integer or float to a string, and that's the stir function. And we've learned a little bit about this. I'm going to take, if everybody wants to hold on for a moment, what I will do is we'll go through the additional practice health data really quick. So basically, I just wanted to show you a little bit more about the structures. So a sample program lab activity, never mind. Following calculates a user's age. All right, this is not what I wanted to do. My apologies. Creating passwords. Okay, this is the one I wanted to do. So what they want us to do is they want to prompt a user to enter two words and a number storing each into separate variables, then output those three variables on a single line separated by a space. So, and actually I have this one on a video. This one is from a video this week. Does it actually go down to, no, it doesn't. I wanted to use one that was the dictionary one, but I think painting a wall is the only one that does that. But the painting a wall, so we're not using, okay. Okay. I really can't do this one with you since it's your lab, but know that it's a dictionary, and please feel free to ask me any questions associated with this. And I'm kind of disappointed that there aren't any optional ones that are dictionary or list based. So, does anybody have any questions?
No, not that I can think of.
Okay. Then I'm going to say good night. Sorry. I'm going to say good night. I will hopefully have this posted in the morning. And please feel free to reach out if you have any questions at all. And I'm planning on doing these weekly while there are Zybook stuff to go through. So I'll be posting another one for next Wednesday night, if Wednesday night works well. So, okay. Okay. So everybody have a good evening, and I should have this up. And also, please take a look at some of the videos I posted. They should be somewhat helpful. And if they're not, let me know, and I'll try and figure out how to make them helpful. Okay? So have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Quick. And we'll go over that one together. Okay? Can you see my screen now? Can you see my screen, Ian? Hello?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So let's go over this, and we'll figure out how to get you less frustrated. So what they're asking us to do here. Sorry?
I hope we can, because this is just driving me nuts.
Okay. So what they want is they want to prompt the user for the number of cups of lemon juice, water, and sugar needed to make lemonade. So that's the problem. How do we make lemonade? And and then prompt the user to specify the number of servings that you can get out of the recipe. So let's start with this, and we're just going to copy all this down because I don't like typing it all. And so we have to ask for a couple of things. Lemon juice cups, they've already given us, okay? They're going to convert it to a float, enter the amount of lemon juice in cups, okay? So that value is going to be 2. So that will go down here. Sorry. That's 2. Okay, so that marries to the first input statement. Okay? So if there's an input here, there has to be a value down here that goes with it.
Okay.
And they've told us up here that they want us to put cup. They want the value to be 2. Okay? So the next, sorry?
I'm with you.
Okay. So the next input statement, they're saying the amount of water. So we're going to say water. So enter the amount of water in cups. Okay? So we'll just make that a float too. And what they want is they want 16. So that's the next thing that goes down here is 16. Okay? So this input statement, water, is going to have a value of 16, and we know that because it's the second input statement. So now they want the amount of agave nectar. And frankly, lemon juice should have sugar in it, in my view. But that's just my view. So we're going to have agave, A-G-A-V, nectar. Okay? And that's going to be a float again. And we're going to say enter the amount of agave nectar in cups. Okay? So it's not water now, it's agave nectar. And we know that value is going to be 2.5. Okay? So that's the third input statement, and the third value goes along with the third input statement. And then we're going to ask how many servings does it make? So let's do this again. And I'm going to leave that as a float, and I'm going to call it servings. And I'm going to say, how many servings does this make? Okay. How many servings does this make? Okay. So we're just going to run this for a second. Oh, and how many servings does it make? So we have to calculate the number of servings. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. No, it's 6. My bad. The number of servings is 6. So that's the fourth input statement. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 input statements, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4 values in that order. Okay?
Okay.
So right now I'm just going to comment these lines out because I want to make sure I don't have any errors. Okay?
All right.
All right. So I'm just going to run it for now and make sure I don't have any errors. If I have an error, I want to fix it. So I don't have any errors with those input statements. That's a good thing. So the next thing I need to do is I need to just print out the ingredients for the lemonade. So I'm going to print lemonade ingredients. But I don't know that it yields 6 servings, but I do know that I have a servings variable. And servings is going to be a float. So I'm going to have a % sign, which is just saying this is a placeholder. And in this case, it's going to be a placeholder for a float. F is a float. So in a print statement, %F says, I'm holding a place for a float. But a float's special because it can have lots of decimal places. So I'm going to say 0.1, which is after the decimal place, I only want one number. Okay?
Okay.
And now I'm going to say quote. Oh, single quote to end that. And then I have to tell it what goes here. What goes in this place. And so I use the % sign as an indication that says anything after this is an ordered list of what to place in these holders, in these placeholders. So in this case, I'm going to say servings. S-E-R. It helps if I can spell. Servings. Okay? So I'm just going to run this again, and I'm going to see if I made any mistakes. Okay? I'm okay. I haven't made any mistakes yet. So then the second part is how much lemon juice. So I'm going to print. I want another placeholder because I've got this variable lemon juice here, or lemon juice cups here. So I'm going to say %, and we know it. We only want one number after the decimal place. So it's %.1F, my placeholder, cups lemon juice. End it with a quote. Now I have to tell it what's going to go in there. So what's going to go in there? Well, lemon juice cups is what's going to go in there because I'm printing out the amount of lemon juice. Okay, so lemon juice cups is going to go directly here. And it is going to, it's only going to have one place after the decimal place. Hold on for just a second. Do I need to go in the other room while I'm finishing this? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. So let's run this again and see what happens. And so far we're doing really good. So now we're going to do the same thing except for cups of water. So it's going to look very, very similar, and copying and pasting is just fine when it comes to programming. Nobody has a problem with that. So this is going to be my variable water. I'm going to run it again, and you can run this thing as many times as you want.
Yeah.
And so far I'm good. And then I have a final one that's cups of agave nectar. Okay?
Okay.
Is this starting to make a little bit more sense?
It is. I guess it's
Okay.
all the percent signs that get me confused too.
Say that again, Ian.
It's all the using of the % signs and everything that has me kind of thrown off at times too.
There is another way to do this, and may not get you at the identical, because you'll have to use the % signs if you want only one decimal place. But so you can also do it like this. Okay? You can say, here, let me copy this. Okay? You can say, because you have, agave nectar is a float, so you'll have to convert it to, you will have to convert it to a string.
It's just easier to use
and
this
concatenate. Yeah. It's more precise.
Okay.
Okay? So You can also do it like this. So you can concatenate. You can just add them together. Now, the thing is that agave nectar will probably come out with more decimal places than you want. So, oh, it didn't. So you can also do it like that. You can concatenate them. You just have to remember if you're concatenating an int or a float with a string, you have to convert the type to a stir. Okay?
Yeah.
So either of those is fine. You may get a little frustrated if you're trying to do an exact number of decimal places, but I'm not going to count a lot off for that. And by the way, with the lab activities, I always go in and I take a look at the code and I verify it independently of Zybooks, because I think Zybooks doesn't do the best job.
Yeah, a lot of this is it's all brand new to me, all this code and stuff.
Mhm.
I'm just easily frustrated by everything. That's all.
Learning to program can be a very frustrating thing. I don't know very many people who it comes completely naturally to. You're having to learn to think differently in a different language. So it's not just learning a new language. It's learning how to think differently in that new language. So that is, that's part of the frustrating stuff. And that's just something that you have to go through. Now, if you take things slowly, step by step by step, like I was just doing here, I was like, okay, let me change this and test it, and then change it and test it. And that's kind of going by like baby steps, but that's okay because you want to know what that line of code changed. What did it do or did it not do? So it's okay to add a line or two of code and run it and see if you created any errors or see if the output's what you're kind of thinking it ought to be. So it's best, in my view, and this is what I do, and I've been programming for a long time, is I write a few lines of code, and then if I possibly can, I test it. And then I write a few more lines of code, and then if I possibly can, I test it. So the process of writing and testing and writing and testing means that I end up with fewer errors, and for you, will hopefully mean you end up with less frustration.
I'm hoping to.
Okay. So do you think you can continue with the rest of this one, or do you want to keep going through it?
I'm going to give it a shot, because it's basically steps. It's just repeating what we just did, right?
Yes. Now, in number 2, you're going to ask them for how many servings would you like to make, and you're going to the input's going to be 48. So that's what you're going to add to the input. And then, so instead of 16, you're going to have 48 servings. So here, what is it? The number of servings is going to be 48.
So you change the input completely.
You just change the input. And so we have 48 servings. Okay, so that's all number 2 is. And then number 3, you're converting the ingredient measurements from 2 to gallons. So we're going from cups to gallons. And there are 16 cups in a gallon. So what you have to do is you have to do some division, some multiplication. 1 gallon, okay. So 1 gallon of lemon juice, 8 gallons of water. So 48 servings, and it's going to be, and instead of 16 cups of lemon juice, it'll be 1 gallon of lemon juice. So that's all you're doing. You're changing it from cups into gallons.
I think that's where I got messed up as well, because I wasn't changing the input.
Yes.
It was just writing more and more lines. And I'm like, wait, why am I getting so many errors on this thing?
Yeah. And so all you have to do here is instead of saying enter amount of lemon juice in cups, say in gallons, or, or you can simply say it's 16 cups. Well, you want 48 servings. So 2 cups of lemon juice, 16 cups of water, and 2.5 cups of agave nectar. So instead, they want you to add these things in. So instead of having enter amount of lemon juice in cups, you're going to have it in gallons, and your input's going to be 1 gallon. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Starting to make sense now. It's just you got to, like you said, change how you think when you're doing all this stuff.
And it's a slow process. It's a very slow process. And again, I apologize for missing that email, Ian.
That's all right. One more quick question. I don't know if you got time to get into it. On when we do the flow chart,
yes,
you put in there the logic behind the steps. I don't quite understand that.
Okay, so a flow chart is a logical flow, okay?
Yeah.
So I'm not looking for code in there. What I want to know is I want to know the steps that you would take. This is a food truck receipt, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So what I want to know are the logical steps that it will take for somebody who's running a food truck to get out, to take your order and get a receipt. So there's going to be an item. So you're going to, input an item. There's going to be an item price, and then possibly a quantity, and then you're going to repeat that until the person's done with their order. And then when the person's done with their order, you're going to total up the amount, and you're going to print out the amount on the receipt. So what you're doing is you're trying to do a logical flow. So think about the steps that would be used at a food truck when you're ordering from a food truck or from a waitress at a restaurant. It doesn't matter.
So pretty much going step by step to placing the order, and then step by step inputting it into, say, a register to print out the receipt.
It's more inputting into the register to output the receipt. So you'd have to input an item and the quantity and the price. And then for the next item, you'd have to do input, quantity, and price. So you'd have to do a loop in your flow chart. And then when it's all done, the decision is, are you done entering items? Yes. Then you have to sum up. You have to calculate the amount for the bill, and then you have to print the bill out.
Okay. Can I use Visio, or does it have to be the other two programs that?
As long as it's an image, you can use whatever you want.
Because in a past class, we did some in a Visio. And that's kind of what I've used before, so that's what I'm more comfortable with. And
okay. If you're comfortable with Visio, use Visio. You have to upload it as an image anyway. I can't read a Visio file or the other files. So you're just going to have to save it as an image. So what it's done in, the tool you use, is not a big deal.
Okay.
Okay?
I guess if I have any other issues, I'll let you know.
And I promise to watch my email closer. I don't know how I missed that email from Monday. It must have been all the snow on my brain.
Hey,
we got rain and we got rain. Y'all got snow. It's all good.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you for all your help.
You have a good evening, and I
You
will
too.
probably talk to you next week.
All right. I'll be here.
All right. Bye-bye.